The association of Hecate with psychoactives can be seen in mystery ceremonies, according to some authors. Take the rites of Artemis Hecate as practiced by the witch Medea. Now, I put witch in quotes here because the word used for her, at least by Apollodorus, is polypharmacon. Now, the scholar David Hillman has translated polypharmacon as to mean drug savvy, and I agree 100% with that translation. Now, the plants found in Medea's garden was said to have included mandrake, aconite, and opium, 3 powerful psychoactive ingredients that would turn up centuries later in early modern flying ointments. For now, they were used in these worship ceremonies. Now, Ovid's Metamorphosis actually includes direct references to psychoactives in Medea's prayer to Hecate. And I quote, "O faithful night, regard my mysteries. O golden lighted stars, O softly moving moon. Genial, your fire succeeds the heated day. O Hecate," actually we're in a sacred space now. "O Ikati, grave 3-faced queen of these charms of enchanters and enchanters' arts. O fruitful earth, giver of potent herbs," and that's the reference to the psychoactives. "O gentle breezes and destructive winds. You mountains, rivers, lakes, and sacred groves, and every dreaded god of silent night, attend upon me." But let's get a little deeper and go inside the rites of Artemis Hecate. What did the ceremony actually look like? Like, what did the initiate go through? And here again, history and lore kind of bounce off each other. We can't say for certain, but we do have maybe a hazy idea. How, if we can believe anyway, the anonymous author of the Argonautica Orphica, this was written around the 5th, 6th centuries of the Common Era. The rites went something like this. The initiate would don a black robe, then fashion 2 small figurines out of barley meal. The initiate, this next part is a little sad, but it's the ancient world. The initiate would then sacrifice 3 black dogs. The dog's blood would be drained and mixed with copper, sulfite, bronze plant, and other herbs. This new concoction would be stuffed back into the dogs' bellies, their carcasses then thrown onto a fire along with handfuls of psychoactive mixtures. Now, we know the mixtures were psychoactive both because ancient sources attest to Medea's knowledge of opium, aconite, and mandrake, and their use in her rituals and magic, but also because, according to the Argonautica Orphica, they caused visions. Out of this fire, apparitions of Hecate, Pandora, and the Furies would emerge. If they were to dance around the fire, this was said to please Artemis, who would then allow the initiate into the mysteries. Now, in the story of the Argonautica Orphica, this is just a way for Medea to initiate Jason, the Argonaut, into the mystery so he can enter the sacred grove and pass Artemis's gates to enter this sacred garden. But I think there might have been something deeper going on there. I think that these authors might have been somewhat familiar with how people actually were initiated. But make no mistake, having said that, Medea was a fictional character, and the stories about her are obviously just fiction. What interests me here is the way ancient authors took for granted that a priestess of a mystery tradition, especially one that includes Hecate, would be familiar with and grow her own psychedelic plants and use those plants in her rites. Such practices that just wasn't weird in the ancient world. And we have examples outside of fiction. Another priestess of the mysteries of Hecate who was all too real, Cresemi, ended up as the general of the Athenian armies due to her knowledge of psychoactive plants and mushrooms attained through her studies in the school of Hecate. Now, I don't have time to get into all the details, but if somebody wants to ask in the Q&A, I'll happily dive into this. Eden and I, we named our kitty cat after Cresemi, so we're big fans. For now, I would just say that I believe Cresemi used the famous Amanita muscaria mushroom, which is the classic red top, that guy, the Amanita muscaria mushroom. I believe she used that to win a decisive victory. It was brilliant military strategy against the Ionians. And if anyone wants to ask again, I'm happy to talk about it during the Q&A. Now, this knowledge and use of psychoactives by priestesses was state sanctioned. However, a priestess could lose her status if she took the pharmaca out of the temples and into the streets. And this seems to have happened. I believe stories about Medea and Circe and others, that actually reflects a real shift that happened in culture. As news of these priestesses' occult powers spread, they were called on more and more by wealthy customers to perform special deeds. Depending on their success, their credibility rose or fell, as did their ability to make money. The de-evolution from devotional, mistheogenic, and entheogenical rites to services performed for a fee outside of temples to private clients moved proper religious techniques into the realm of the magical arts. Indeed, it seems some priestesses and even some Christian monks had off-the-books side work to supplement their income. So think of this as sort of like a magical gig economy in the ancient world. So we know, for example, about a priestess named Theoris, who also tended to private clients on the side. In a somewhat careless move, she sold her pharmaca to a charlatan. We learn that the charlatan used Theoris's pharmaca for a variety of pythogenic intentions. This man did, however, come to Theoris's defense when she was arrested. Sadly, it was all for naught, because, having the criminal come to defend you doesn't always work out. Sadly, Theoris was executed for profaning the holy pharmaca of the temples by bringing them out to regular people. And I want to just say that the reporter at the time, a statesman, an Athenian statesman named Demosthenes, actually writes that this is the reason. He literally writes for her drugs. That's why this happened, for profaning these sacred drugs. Now, men were not necessarily immune from these charges either. In Egypt, a certain Shnut, the abbot of the White Monastery, complained about monks using their ceremonial pharmaca to deal the daily woes of regular people. Those fallen into poverty or in sickness or indeed some other trial abandon God and run for enchanters or diviners. Moreover, this is the manner that they anoint themselves with oil concocted by enchanters and drug makers, with every deceptive kind of relief. So the problem, as Chenot saw it, was that monks were employing the famed Egyptian pharmacy in ways that he determined to be wholly unorthodox. Alas, he was fighting against deeply rooted pagan medical magical beliefs, and the church in the 4th century, when Chenot lived, hadn't grown into the Goliath it would become in the following century. So despite his frustrations, there was nothing much he could do about this. With our examples of Theoris and the monks of the White Monastery, we can recognize transference of spiritual pharmaca into magical drugs as bastardized by both Grecian and Roman and even later Christian authorities. Archbishop John Chrysostom would ridicule the medicines of wise women in his 8th homily on Colossians. Here he warns his congregation about the true nature of these women's medicines. It is that wiliness of the devil to cloak over the deceit and to give the deleterious drug in honey. After he found that he could not prevail with you in the other way, he has gone this way about to stitch charms in old wives' fables. And the cross indeed is dishonored, and these charms preferred before it. Once the pharmaca had left the temples, it's anyone's guess what people did with them.